You sit there again, staring at the unfinished tasks, feeling that familiar weight pressing on your chest. It's heavy, suffocating, like invisible chains wrapped around your shoulders, pulling you down. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. Every morning you wake with a flicker of intention, and every evening you collapse under the quiet accusation of your own hesitation. You feel smaller, weaker, less capable than you were yesterday. And the more you try to push, the louder the voice in your head grows, whispering that maybe this is who you are, maybe this is all you'll ever be. You feel stuck, trapped inside your own inaction, wondering why the world moves forward while you remain frozen. The frustration eats at you, the guilt becomes familiar, and yet nothing seems to change. But what if it isn't laziness at all? What if the part of you that hesitates, that procrastinates, that falters, is not broken? What if it's trying to tell you something? Your struggle, your failure to start, isn't a verdict on your character. It's a signal that something beneath the surface is unsettled, unacknowledged, waiting for attention. Your mind isn't against you, it's protecting you. Every pause, every delay, every moment of hesitation is your body and soul begging for clarity, for direction, for a way forward that feels safe enough to step into. You start to notice the pattern. The fear you've been calling laziness isn't empty. It's fear of failing, fear of judgment, fear of stepping into the unknown. You've been labeling it wrong, blaming yourself for what is really a natural response to uncertainty and pressure. And once you see it for what it truly is, the weight begins to lift. That heaviness you felt is no longer a wall, it's a doorway. It's a call to look deeper, to ask yourself why you hesitate, and to give yourself permission to begin, even imperfectly, even quietly. And in that permission lies power. You realize that action doesn't have to be monumental to matter. Progress doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. The first step, however small, becomes proof that you are capable, proof that you can break free from the paralysis that has held you hostage. Every hesitant attempt becomes momentum. Every small choice builds strength. Every moment of courage reinforces your capacity to move forward. By the time you take the first step, you understand that you were never lazy. You were cautious, protected, waiting for a signal that never came until now. And now, standing at the edge of your hesitation, you can feel it. The chains loosening, the weight lifting, the voice of self-doubt quieting. You're not broken. You're awakening. And this awakening is unstoppable. You wake up again with that familiar heaviness in your chest, the one that makes your shoulders slump even before the day begins. You stare at the to-do list, the blank page, the unfinished dream, and the world feels like it's moving past you at lightning speed while you remain frozen, caught in the quiet prison of your own hesitation. You tell yourself, I'll start later, I'll try tomorrow, but deep down, you know tomorrow will feel exactly the same. You feel a sting of shame that has become routine, a subtle, gnawing voice whispering that maybe you just don't have what it takes, maybe you are inherently incapable, maybe this is all you are. And the strangest part is that you aren't even lazy. You're tired, yes, but it's not your body that fails you. It's your mind, tangled in fear, uncertainty, and invisible pressure. Every pause, every delay, every hesitation is your soul speaking in its own language, signaling that something beneath the surface is unsettled, waiting to be faced. You've been labeling it wrong for so long, calling it weakness, laziness, failure, but what if it's nothing like that? What if what you feel is not a verdict on your worth, but a reflection of the barriers you've never truly acknowledged? You start noticing the pattern. The discomfort, the restlessness, the weight pressing on you, it isn't random. It's fear of judgment, fear of falling short, fear of stepping into the unknown. And the moment you see it clearly, something inside shifts. The weight doesn't disappear, but it no longer paralyzes you. You realize that your hesitation is not an enemy. It's a signal, an invitation to pause, reflect, and approach the challenge differently. You begin to understand that action doesn't have to be perfect to matter. Momentum is built one deliberate step at a time, even when every part of you wants to wait for the right moment. And when you take that first imperfect step, a door opens. You see that you are capable of more than you believed, that the fear wasn't a wall but a marker, a guide showing you where courage is needed most. Each small action, repeated and witnessed by your own growing awareness, begins to shift something fundamental in you. You feel energy returning, focus sharpening, confidence quietly swelling from the inside out. The voice of self-doubt doesn't disappear, but it loses its power because you are learning to move through it, not around it. By the time you stand fully in that space, you recognize something profound. You were never truly lazy. You were cautious, you were afraid, you were waiting for clarity that only came when you began. And beginning, even imperfectly, is the spark that ignites everything. You are not weak. You are awake, and that awakening is unstoppable. You feel it again, that tight knot in your chest that makes your heart beat faster even as your mind whispers, "Not now. Not yet." Every step forward feels heavy, every choice loaded with invisible stakes, as if the world is watching and judging your hesitation. You know the dream, you know the goal, but every attempt to move closer is met with doubt, uncertainty, and that nagging fear that maybe you'll fail before you even start. The tension isn't just in your body, it lives inside your thoughts, your memories, your quiet self-judgments. It's in the moments you pause, the moments you look back at your past attempts and wonder if this time will be any different. You're stuck between wanting to act and fearing the consequences, trapped in a space where growth feels both essential and impossible. But what if that tension is exactly what matters? What if the hesitation, the fear, the uncertainty you've been trying to escape is not a blockade, but a signal pointing to where growth lives? Every time you feel the pull to stop, it's actually a call to focus, a chance to see yourself more clearly, to understand the invisible walls you've been building inside. That fear that paralyzes you is also your potential speaking quietly, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for courage to meet it. You realize that avoidance has kept you small, not protection. You see that every pause, every delay, every moment of self-doubt has been a test, not of your ability but of your willingness to face yourself fully, to act despite the uncertainty. And in that realization, a shift begins. The hesitation doesn't vanish instantly, but it changes shape. It becomes a guide instead of a trap. You start noticing small openings where action is possible, places where you can take the first step without needing the perfect conditions. You discover that movement, no matter how imperfect, dismantles the power of fear. Each choice you make, each forward step, proves to yourself that you are not defined by the weight of your doubt. You start to see that fear is not an enemy but a threshold, a barrier that only exists until you decide to move through it. By the time you take that step, something inside clicks. The tension that once immobilized you now fuels you. Every heartbeat, every ounce of resistance becomes momentum. You feel the first stirrings of confidence that are not loud or triumphant, but steady and undeniable. And you finally understand, hesitation was never your weakness. It was the signal that you were standing on the edge of something transformative, waiting to realize that potential doesn't come without tension, and growth never exists without the weight of fear. You are stronger than the doubt you once let define you, and now, moving forward feels inevitable. You've been moving cautiously, testing the waters, feeling every tremor of doubt that runs beneath your attempts. Every step forward feels tentative, every choice measured, as if one wrong move could undo everything. You know the fear that's been whispering in your mind, fear of failure, fear of being exposed, fear that your efforts will never be enough. And you've listened to it too long, letting it guide your decisions, letting it shrink your world. You feel the pressure of all the things you haven't done, of all the opportunities that have passed quietly while you hesitated, and it makes your chest tighten, your stomach knot, your mind spin. Every time you think about acting, the familiar question rises, what if it doesn't work? And that question has kept you frozen, even when your heart knows you are capable of more. But what if the answer isn't in pushing harder or trying longer? What if the key lies in seeing things differently, in shifting the lens through which you view your struggle? 4 years, you've been interpreting hesitation as weakness, inaction as failure, waiting for some external spark to ignite you. But the spark you've been searching for has been inside you all along, hidden under layers of fear and self-doubt. When you pause and let yourself see clearly, you start to notice the subtle shifts, the small choices that have always been available, the tiny acts that carry meaning and momentum. You realize that action doesn't need to be monumental to matter. Movement, no matter how small, begins to untangle the web of fear. And then, slowly, the perspective begins to change. You start to recognize patterns in yourself. Moments when hesitation disguised your potential, moments when doubt masked opportunity. You see that every time you held back, it was not proof of incapability, but evidence that growth lives outside comfort. You understand that the tension, the resistance, the internal fight, they are indicators that you are standing at the threshold of something transformative. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a guidepost pointing to where your courage is needed most. The first step, when taken with awareness, carries more weight than weeks of uncertain motion. You take it and the world feels slightly lighter. One choice opens the space for the next. The knot in your chest loosens. Confidence starts quietly, almost imperceptibly, building from the inside out. You see yourself not as someone blocked by hesitation, but as someone learning the rhythm of action and courage. Every forward move validates your ability to navigate uncertainty. And in that moment, clarity strikes. You've been capable all along. You only needed to shift how you saw yourself, how you approached the fear, how you understood hesitation. By the end, you realize that transformation doesn't come from force, but from perspective. The walls you thought were unmovable are now markers for where strength lives, and the momentum you've gained feels inevitable. You are not just moving, you are awakening, step by deliberate step, into the power that has always been inside you. You've taken steps you once thought impossible, and yet the journey still feels heavy. The echoes of your old doubts linger, whispering that progress is fragile, that one misstep could undo everything you've built. Every morning you feel the tension of possibility pressing on your chest. The fear that today might not be enough, that your actions are too small to matter. And for a moment you wonder if the struggle is futile, if the weight you carry will ever lift. The path forward is not clear. You see glimpses of what you want, but the fog of hesitation and self-questioning clouds your vision. You've been pushing against invisible walls, and sometimes the effort feels wasted. But slowly, imperceptibly, something begins to change. You notice the small actions that once seemed insignificant. The choice to keep moving when you wanted to stop, the decision to try again after failure, the commitment to show up even when the outcome is uncertain. Those tiny decisions, when strung together, begin to form a rhythm. You realize that the struggle itself is not an obstacle, it's the scaffold of growth, the raw material of transformation. Every bit of discomfort, every moment of doubt, every hesitation becomes part of the structure that is reshaping your life. What once felt like a burden now feels like a marker, signaling that you are alive, learning, and stretching beyond the limits you thought you had. You start to see yourself differently. The fear, the hesitation, the frustration, they no longer define you. Instead, they trace the path you've walked, the lessons you've absorbed, the resilience you've built. Each step forward, no matter how small, reinforces your capacity to grow. You notice the subtle shifts in perspective. Patience replaces frustration, clarity replaces confusion, and confidence quietly emerges from the inside out. Your identity begins to expand beyond the confines of your previous limitations. You are becoming someone who can act despite fear, who can create despite uncertainty, who can persevere even when the path is unclear. And then the breakthrough arrives, not as a loud announcement but as a quiet, undeniable realization. You understand that transformation was never a single dramatic moment. It was a series of small choices, a collection of intentional steps, a persistence that didn't depend on perfection. The struggles you endured were not detours, they were the foundation. Every setback, every pause, every hesitation has been part of a process that is reshaping not just what you do but who you are. You are not the person you were yesterday. You are stronger, wiser, more aware, and ready to act with purpose. Standing here, looking back at the journey, you finally see it clearly. The struggle was never a sign of weakness. It was proof that growth is happening, that transformation is inevitable when you embrace each step, no matter how small. And now, moving forward, you carry that truth with you, unshakable and real. You stand at the edge of everything you've been building, looking back at the path that felt endless, heavy, and unforgiving. You remember the mornings you couldn't move, the nights filled with doubt, the countless times you thought you weren't enough. Every hesitation, every failure, every moment of fear has led you here. And now, in this stillness, you feel the weight lifting, not suddenly, not like magic, but because you've carried it with intention, step by step, choice by choice. The struggle wasn't punishment. It was preparation, the forge in which your resilience and clarity were shaped. You feel it first as a quiet shift in your chest, a sense of power that doesn't scream, but hums steadily beneath your ribs. The uncertainty that once paralyzed you now feels like an ally, guiding your decisions instead of stopping them. You notice how far you've come, not in leaps or dramatic gestures, but in the quiet, persistent acts of courage you thought would go unnoticed. Each small step was a declaration, a refusal to be defined by fear, a claim that your life is yours to shape. And suddenly, what once seemed impossible no longer feels distant. It begins to feel inevitable. This is the moment you understand that transformation is never abrupt. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or fanfare. It grows silently, in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the courage to keep going when every instinct tells you to stop, in the acceptance that progress is rarely linear. You see now that the power you sought outside yourself, approval, luck, clarity, was inside you all along. Every struggle, every hesitation, every step forward, even when small, was proof that you already possessed it. And with that realization comes freedom. Freedom from the weight of self-doubt, from the illusion that progress must be immediate, from the belief that struggle is failure. You see the horizon clearly, not as a distant fantasy, but as a space shaped by the choices you've already made. The fire that was smoldering inside you has become a current that moves through every action, every thought, every breath. You feel unstoppable not because life has changed but because you have. By the time you exhale, you understand the final truth. Growth is forged in discomfort, resilience is born from resistance, and transformation comes to those who refuse to let fear dictate the terms of their life. You are no longer the person who hesitated. You are no longer held back by doubt. You are the version of yourself who acts, who moves, who persists, who sees struggle not as a limit but as a signal. And that realization, simple, profound, undeniable, changes everything.